Alright guys, I want to do a quick little video here on troubleshooting a basic zone board. Doesn't really matter if it's a Robert Shaw, Aprilaire, Honeywell, or EWC. Um, I typically go for EWC when I replace a zone board. I just like them. They're good. They're a good company, and I think they have really good zone equipment, including their dampers. But this one here is a faulty zone board I replaced on Thursday with an EWC BM Plus 3000. It's just a basic troubleshooting 3-zone board, and I just wanted to go to just the basics with you guys just to make sure, especially some of the new guys coming out of school. I know you don't learn too much on zoning, especially troubleshooting them, but they're pretty simple once you get to work on them. Basically, what you have here is a board, and you'll notice on the left side here is equipment, and then you have all your terminals. That's guys, those terminals are going to your equipment, whether it's an air handler or a gas furnace or whatever. And you'll notice over here you'll see zone 1, and on the left side it'll say thermostat, on the right side it'll say motor. So your thermostat for the zone 1 area will be wired into the terminals here. This one is, you can run 2-stage equipment on there, or 2-stage thermostat as well. And on the right side you got your motor over here, and you'll see there's an M6, M4, M1. M1 typically is going to be your common, M4 if I'm not mistaken is open, and M6 is your close. And that's powering up your motor, whether it's a power open spring close motor, or a power close spring open motor, or power open power close motor. I typically, when I replace them, I always go with a power open power close damper. They're a little more expensive, but they're way more reliable than the spring open or spring close dampers. They just burn up too easily. And then the same thing goes over here. You got zone 2 thermostat and motor. So that's where your zone 2 thermostat would wire up, and your zone 2 damper would wire up there as well. Same thing goes for zone 3. So this board can handle 3 zones. So here's where you would run all your thermostat wiring and the appropriate damper motor wires to those zones here. And then over here you'll see, you probably can't notice the letter, but it's, I think it has, what is it, TR or something like that on the bottom where the blue and green wire go to. That's for your 24-volt connection. Typically, any zone system is going to require a secondary transformer, so you'll want to have an additional transformer inside the furnace powering up the zone board, especially if you have bigger dampers. I think EWC requires, like, if you have like more than 2 10-inch dampers or a 12-inch, they want you to put a secondary transformer. I usually just put a secondary transformer anyway. So that's where those 2 terminals there, that's where you power up the board. This is incoming 24-volt power to the zone board. And then you got a couple little dip switches over here for emergency heat. So if you got a dual fuel system or a heat pump and you switch this on, it'll, if any one or any of these zones call for heating, even if it's first stage, it's going to run emergency. So if you got a dual fuel, it's going to run gas. Even if you're calling for just first stage heat, it'll still run back up. So if your heat pump ever breaks down, you can just leave the switch on, and then if any of these zones call for heat, it'll just bring on the gas. It won't even bring on the heat pump. Not all zone boards have these, but this zone board has a zone alone switch which is right over here. And basically what that means is you can, when it's engaged on the bottom here, like so, it'll actually bring on all three zones at the same time. So zone 1 typically will be the master zone, and if it's calling, it'll run all zones at the same time, heating or cooling. And then the two TL terminals over here on the left side, top left side of the board, that's going to be for your temperature, your discharge air sensor. This one actually didn't have one, which I'm not surprised. Most people end up not putting sensors in there. I don't know why. The system works way more efficiently and safely with them. That's what they're there for. EWC actually sends a supplier sensor with all their zone boards, so you don't have to worry about ordering one additionally. And then you got a few dip switches here, and all this right here is basically, you have to look at the manual, but basically it's just a set of what type of equipment you have, your secondary heating if you have one, and all that good stuff. And then you got a couple potentiometers here, guys. You'll notice one says max temperature, the other one says stage timer. Max temperature, that's going to be your discharge sensor limit. So if you want typically you'll have a temperature limit for the main limit on the furnace. You want the system through the discharge sensor to cycle the system off prior to exceeding the main limit, because if you exceed the main limit, you're going to go into a lockout. So that's what that's there for. So typically you want to definitely set it well below the main limit set point to make sure if you only have one zone calling or whatever, if it gets too hot in the plenum, it'll actually turn the system off and go through a purge cycle and basically just run the blower, cool the heat exchanger down, and then go through its time delays and fire it back up. That's pretty much what that's there for. And then you got your stage timer here on the right side, and you'll notice you have some time there, and that's basically your second stage timer. So when you get a call for first stage heat through the zones, they'll go through, let's say you have this for 5 minutes, they'll go through a 5-minute timer, and if you still got a call for heat, it'll bring on backup heat. And that's for the most part it. Not all boards have LED lights. These here do. You got a couple LEDs. You'll actually see if there's a heat output. Cool. Purge means it's going to open up all your dampers and run the blower. And then your idle, fan, emergency heat. And you'll actually, this one here will light green if there's a call in that zone, and red if there's no call, or if the zone is disabled. And then you got an override purge button, so you can actually hit this for a couple seconds and it'll override the time delays in the purge and all that stuff. And for the most part, guys, that's really all it is to it. Every zone board is different, everyone's set up different and labeled a little differently. I know EWC, they give you a lot more potentiometers. You have a lot more adjustments you can make and fine-tune the system. They give you an actual cooling limit. So if the temperature gets too low to prevent freezing, you can set that. They give you a heating limit. They give you a second stage heating limit, and so on and so forth. So I think EWC is a little more superior than this basic control attempt zone board. But this one over here, what was wrong with the on a call for heat, I didn't check it on cooling, but on a call for heat on any of the zone terminals here, it would not give the appropriate output. I would never give, it was actually a straight AC with electric system for a salon, and I was getting inputs, but I wasn't getting any outputs. And that's really the only way to troubleshoot these guys. It's just all about inputs and outputs. If you look at your zones, you know if your thermostat's calling, you can verify that by here. You know, so if I know the thermostat's locked in on heat on zone 1, I go to common and W here, and it will let me know if I get 24 volts between common and W, I know my thermostat's calling. So that kind of eliminates low voltage wiring from the thermostat to the board and the thermostat. And if I have my input, I should be getting my output, which is over here. Here's all your inputs, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and here's all your outputs. And then here's where you check your damper. Some dampers have lights, you can see if they're open, the green, if it's closed, if it's red. Some of them don't, so you verify that by your voltage here, common, and then you go to the open terminal. If you're not getting any type of voltage, the board's not giving any voltage to the damper to open up, so it's just a bad board. So these are your outputs for your dampers, inputs for your thermostats, output for equipment. If everything's dead in here, you want to check 24 volts. That's the first thing I always do when I troubleshoot. I check right here. If I got 24 volts, then I move on to the thermostats. If I'm good here, then I move on to the dampers, make sure the dampers are functioning, and then I move on to the equipment. And if I don't get that, then, like in this case, I wasn't getting any output between common and W1, then it's a bad zone board. Now, if you are getting an output, then you move on to the equipment. You just have an equipment issue. So basically it, and we'll show you how this one over here runs. I actually got this one wired up to a transformer and to this little thing right here, and I will see. You see? So that's what you'll typically see on this thermostat, and it'll blink idle, and then in a couple seconds it'll hit purge, and it's just going through its time delay. And what I have here, I have R and Y1 and G jumped out. So it's like a call for cool. See? And if I want to speeden it up, I hold that. Here we go. And we got a call for cool. So sometimes you can quickly troubleshoot with the LED lights, but you always want to bring a meter with you and check all your inputs and outputs and stuff like that. So that's, for the most part, troubleshooting a zone board, guys. And yeah, like I said, every zone board is different. Some of them have LCD, some of them have LED, some of them don't have anything at all. It just depends on what you're working on. But they're all mostly the same. Remember, inputs and outputs, that's all you have. Alright guys, see you on the next one.